When pilots mocked the so-called flying egg, could a strange, rounded aircraft truly prove them wrong at 20,000 feet? The date was late 1944. The war in Europe was approaching its final, desperate phase. Over the skies of Germany, Allied bombers pushed deeper every day, while the Luftwaffe struggled to respond with dwindling fuel. Exhausted pilots and experimental aircraft rushed into service. At a remote test facility, hidden deep within southern Germany, a peculiar machine sat on the runway. It didn't look like a fighter. It didn't look like a bomber. In fact, many who saw it laughed. Short, stubby, and almost spherical in shape, it earned a nickname among test crews, the Flying Egg. But what happened next? What unfolded at 20,000 feet would silence the laughter forever. By late 1944, Germany's aviation industry was under immense pressure. Allied bombing campaigns had crippled production facilities, forcing engineers to improvise, relocate, and innovate at unprecedented speed. Traditional aircraft designs were no longer enough. The Luftwaffe needed something new, something radical. Enter a small team of engineers tasked with exploring unconventional aerodynamics. Their goal was simple, yet bold: create an aircraft that could achieve superior maneuverability and survivability with minimal resources. The result was a compact, rounded airframe, unlike anything seen before. The design emphasized reduced drag, structural strength, and a smaller radar profile. Its short wings and bulbous fuselage gave it an almost organic shape, like a seed or an egg. To engineers, it was promising. To pilots, it was absurd. Test pilots, hardened by years of combat in Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s, viewed the aircraft with skepticism. Some openly mocked it. They questioned its stability. They doubted its speed. And most of all, they doubted whether it could even handle high-altitude flight. "It looks like something that belongs in a kitchen, not the sky," one pilot reportedly joked. But behind the laughter was a deeper truth. Germany was running out of options. Fuel shortages limited training hours. Experienced pilots were scarce. Every new aircraft had to work, and work immediately. The Flying Egg was not just an experiment, it was a gamble. And the men assigned to test it would soon discover just how high the stakes truly were. The test was scheduled for a cold morning in December 1944. The airfield lay under a gray sky, with low clouds drifting across the horizon. A bitter wind cut through the tarmac, carrying with it the distant rumble of war. Ground crews prepared the aircraft in silence. Fuel lines were checked, control surfaces inspected. The engine, an experimental power plant adapted for the unique airframe, was carefully tuned. By 0800 hours, the pilot assigned to the test arrived. He was not a rookie. A veteran of multiple combat sorties, he had seen dogfights over France and defensive engagements against Allied bombers. He understood aircraft, and he understood risk. Even he, however, was uncertain. Standing before the Flying Egg, he paused. The cockpit was cramped, embedded within the rounded fuselage. Visibility was limited compared to conventional fighters. He circled the aircraft slowly, taking in its unusual proportions. No sleek lines, no aggressive angles, just a compact, almost awkward shape. And yet, something about it felt deliberate. By 0830 hours, the engine roared to life. The sound was deep and uneven at first, then stabilized into a steady growl. Exhaust fumes curled into the cold air as the aircraft taxied toward the runway. A small group of observers gathered at a safe distance. Some watched with curiosity, others with quiet amusement. They expected little. At 0845 hours, clearance was given. The aircraft rolled forward. Acceleration was slower than expected at first, but then, as speed increased, something changed. The Flying Egg lifted from the ground with surprising smoothness. No wobble, no instability. It climbed, steadily, confidently. The pilot, still cautious, kept his ascent gradual. By 5,000 feet, he began testing control responsiveness. The aircraft responded, not perfectly, but better than anticipated. Turns were tight. Roll rate was unusual, but manageable. By 10,000 feet, the ground below faded into a patchwork of gray and white. Radio chatter crackled through the cockpit. Ground control requested status updates. The pilot responded with measured words. Stable, controls responsive, continuing ascent. But doubts remained. The real test was yet to come. The goal was 20,000 feet, high altitude, thin air, reduced engine performance, and increased risk. By 1100 hours, the aircraft reached 15,000 feet. Clouds enveloped the fuselage, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Ice began to form along the edges. The cockpit grew colder. Breathing became more labored. Every instrument reading mattered. Every sound from the engine was analyzed. Then, at 18,000 feet, something unexpected happened. A slight vibration, barely noticeable at first, then stronger. The pilot tightened his grip on the controls. Was it structural, engine-related, aerodynamic instability? Report status. Ground control called in. There was a pause. Then the pilot replied. Continuing. Minor vibration. Monitoring. Inside the cockpit, tension grew. Outside, observers could only watch the sky, waiting. The final climb to 20,000 feet would determine everything. At 19,000 feet, the vibration intensified. The aircraft began to shudder, not violently, but enough to raise alarm. The controls felt different, less predictable. The engine note fluctuated. Fuel flow indicators wavered. The pilot realized the truth. This was the edge, the limit of what the aircraft had been designed, or perhaps rushed, to endure. He had a choice. Abort the climb, descend immediately, or continue, just a little further, just enough to reach 20,000 feet. Recommend descent. Ground control urged caution, but the pilot hesitated. Months of work, engineering effort, desperation, all leading to this moment. If he turned back now, the project might be abandoned. The flying egg would remain a joke. He looked at the altimeter, 19,500 feet. The vibration worsened. Warning lights flickered. The aircraft felt alive beneath him, unstable, unpredictable. Fear gripped him, but so did determination. Continuing climb, he said. Silence followed. Then, slowly, the altimeter crept upward. 19,700 feet, 19,800 feet, 19,900 feet. The cockpit rattled, the engine strained, and then 20,000 feet. For a brief moment, everything seemed to hang in balance. The aircraft held, barely. Then came the real crisis. The vibration suddenly stopped, replaced by something worse, a loss of responsiveness. The controls felt loose, disconnected. The aircraft began to drift, then tilt. The pilot reacted instantly, adjusting inputs. But the response was delayed, sluggish, dangerously so. The thin air had pushed the aircraft beyond its stable envelope. Stall conditions loomed. At this altitude, recovery was not guaranteed. The nose dipped. Speed increased. The aircraft entered an unstable descent. Inside the cockpit, alarms sounded. The pilot fought the controls. Every movement required precision. Too much input, and the aircraft could spin. Too little, and it would continue falling. For a moment it seemed inevitable. The flying egg would fail, and take its pilot with it. But then, in that critical moment, the pilot made a decision. Instead of forcing the controls as he would in a conventional fighter, he adapted. He remembered the aircraft's design, its rounded shape, its unique aerodynamics. He eased his grip, reduced input, let the aircraft stabilize itself. Seconds passed, long, agonizing seconds. Then, gradually, the response returned. The nose leveled, the descent slowed. Control surfaces regained effectiveness. The aircraft began to recover, not through force, but through understanding. The pilot adjusted throttle carefully, balancing speed and stability. At 18,000 feet, the aircraft was under control again. At 15,000 feet, it felt stable. At 10,000 feet, confidence returned. Status? Ground control, silent for much of the descent, finally spoke. The pilot responded, voice steady but filled with something new. Recovered. Aircraft stable. Returning to base. Below, the airfield came into view. The same observers who had laughed earlier now watched in tense anticipation. The aircraft approached. Landing gear deployed. Final descent initiated. At 1200 hours, the flying egg touched down. Smoothly, cleanly, and rolled to a stop. For a moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, the reality set in. It had reached 20,000 feet. It had survived, and it had proven something unexpected. This strange mock design had potential. In the days that followed, engineers analyzed the data. Flight performance, control response, structural integrity. Despite its flaws, and there were many, The aircraft had demonstrated remarkable characteristics. Its compact design showed promise for survivability. Its maneuverability, once understood, offered unique advantages, and its ability to reach high altitude, even under strain, proved it was more than just an experiment. The pilot's report was detailed, honest, and surprisingly positive. He acknowledged the risks, the instability, the danger, but he also recognized something others had missed: potential. The Flying Egg was not ready for combat. Not yet. But it was no longer a joke. It was a concept worth refining. In a war defined by innovation and desperation, even the strangest ideas could hold value. As for the pilot, his actions did not go unnoticed. Though records remain limited, it is believed he received commendation for his bravery and composure under extreme conditions. He had taken a risk, faced a crisis, and returned with answers. The aircraft itself would not change the course of the war. Time had already run out for such experiments, but its story remains, a testament to the courage of those willing to test the unknown, and to the idea that sometimes the most unlikely designs can defy expectations, even at 20,000 feet. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.